Well, Dairo joins us now. He's the Publicity Secretary of Lagos chapter of the Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, talking about this national conference and its composition, and yes, we do know there are lots of groups, professional bodies, different groups really, talking about, okay, how do we get this up and running in terms of their participation? But having looked through all of those, are you satisfied with what you've seen in terms of the composition?
Well, even before you hear the composition, you understand that most of the noise that's been generated about this conference so far, I think is basically a result of the trust deficit that between politicians themselves and between politicians and the people generally, you know. So that's why everything raised undue noise, and I think all of that is beginning to take our focus away from what should be the real issue. Because at the end of the day, left to me, I think there's been too much focus on ethnic nationalism. Don't forget, I mean, don't get me wrong, in our unity, we should also give room to celebrate our diversity. But basically, at the end of the day, we all have the same goals: survival, you know. So, and you know, don't forget we're in a melee where there has been so much focus on politicking as against governance. And again, you know, we're now bringing this conference at a time, and it seems to be we are making politics again the central issue here, and we would have gotten it wrong ab initio. You know, I think basically what we should be looking at is development. You know,
okay.
Having realized that we all have basically the same goal, so how does your goal of ethnic A, B, C, and D, how do we synergize them such that it can form a national plan?
But they argue that you have to identify, itemize them, before you then bring them at that level where you cannot begin to think about synergizing them.
Itemize, you see, well, it's just not, it's beyond just a question of how you I mean, nomenclature here or semantics here. Already, there has been so much issue about ethnic nationalities, politics, and you know, you had when he said it's purely political statement will be is a political process and all of that, and I think that for me, you know, like okay, say for example, for a person like my constituencies now, persons with disability, you know, I don't know how much presence persons with disability in Nigeria has in Nigerian politics. You know, and now you are bringing them into an environment where predominantly the issue is about politics. And don't forget that in a nation, and the United Nations estimates has it at 20% average of every population, which is even far higher in a developing country like ours. At least 20% of every population are persons with disability. Now you have just 6 people, one from each geopolitical zone, to represent 20% of 160 million people. You know, so you can see that they are already disabled.
What would you prefer?
Well, beyond just saying the number should be increased, I think we should start focusing more on developmental issues. Okay? Like the senator said, political economics.
But don't you think that, I mean, focusing on developmental issues would not be an abstract? You have to situate it. First of all, I mean, this is who we are. People
definitely
go to different locations, look at politicians who are in political positions, look at public office holders. It boils down to who we are, the ethnic nationalities. It is upon that platform, you know, that serves as a springboard for development and for every other thing that comes up. So if they feel dissatisfied in one way or the other, you'll have pockets of disagreements, and which will seep in, and over time, it's just there.
Politicians being who they are, you know, I wouldn't feel too comfortable with that, your very simplistic picture of the situation. Also, for the same reason, okay, look like an institution like the NBA. You know, I feel very uncomfortable that NBA, like as it is, and don't forget that with the kind of problem we have with our political system, it seems every political exercise has to fall back on the judiciary at the end of the day, and our judiciary is not getting better for it. You know, so now, so a lot rests on the judiciary, and as important as the judiciary is, just one person is coming, and you don't tell me that even within the NBA there is a consensus of opinions.
Okay, if it's coming across, I'm not focusing on the fact that it should be about ethnic nationalities alone. No. You know, what the argument is out there is that it should largely focus on that as well. I mean, you heard Mr. Digby, on what basis did the country come together? Was it on the basis of professionals? It wasn't. It was thereafter it developed into all of those. So the platform upon which it came together has to be factored in alongside all these other views. That's the point.
Well, like I said, I don't have a problem with that. But you see, politicians being who they are, you know, the more you see, before you know it, the agenda, the focus, and everything starts changing. Now, but for me as a person with disability, is a very welcome development. That, I mean, my constituency is even being considered in any case, you know. But what I'm so looking at here, beyond having them represented, even the board, the organizing body,
The advisory board?
Yes.
Okay.
How disability informed are they? You know, because beyond the 6 disabled persons from the different political zones, it is not impossible that many of the other participants are going to be persons with disability. So how will they be equipped and ready to factor all of this into their program?
What kind of issues should they be focusing on, you know, such that persons, physically challenged persons, will always be factored into everything we do in this country?
Now, first, I think it's about persons with disabilities generally.
Okay.
You know, people often feel uncomfortable with that word, but it's not derogatory. It's more encompassing.
So this is larger,
yes,
than
because when you say
challenged.
physically challenged, blind people are not physically challenged. Deaf, hearing impaired people are not physically challenged, and disability means different things to them. Now, one major issue about disability is accessibility. Is the Article 9 of the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. But accessibility, as it were, access and accessibility means different things for different persons with disability. Now, as a physically challenged person, you may have ramps. I can come in, I can enter the premises and all of that. But how accessible are the facilities there? When I get to your gents, can I be able to use my wheelchair there and all of that? That's what accessibility means for a person with physical challenge. But for a deaf person, it means different thing. Your arrows, your signages that point to the gents, to emergencies and all of that, how visible are they? Now, for a blind person, the memos and every other thing that is going to be circulated there, how accessible will it be on Braille? You know, because these are very important. Because if these are not taken care of for them, they might just as well not been invited. You know, so I think even the organizing committee themselves need to be equipped. You know, because now you are bringing them on board. You know, so you bringing me on board means you must at least have the courtesy to cater for my peculiarities as a person with disability, you know, and that gives us a picture of what the world is talking about. You know, in other countries, you know, these things are granted issues. You know, you don't get to you get to an hotel. Naturally you see wheelchair signs which shows where persons with disability can go and all of that. You see signages, well positions and everything like that. So these are granted issues, you know. So how do we now situate them in our context here? And also, you see, I'm very much particular about development because now I can sit here and speak grammar. But you see, a whole lot of persons with disability in the area. For one of me, there are about thousands of disabled persons who never had access to education, you know. education for a person with disability, you probably spend what it takes to send about 3-4 children on one disabled child. You know, so, and it's even far worse in rural areas. So how does development reach them, you know, in this whole agenda of discussion we're talking about?
Listening to you now, I think what comes to mind is the composition of this particular conference. I think for the first time we're getting to see a government that is trying to bring, even though we're looking at it from your own view, that it is almost inadequate to have just 6, one from each geopolitical zone. But I think it's the right step, because for the first time we get to understand what kind of challenges people living with disabilities go through. So I'm hoping that when they're there in this conference, they should also be able to expel some of these challenges and make it a national issue so that they can be sorted and taken care of. But you kept on saying you are bothered about development. Let's talk more on that. What area are you looking at? Are you looking at broad-based development, or you're looking at development specifically for those living with disabilities?
Well, there's no way you can, because even presently, you know, the UN Millennium Development Goals, you know, is currently being reviewed because of all those 8 agendas there. There's no way you can achieve them if you don't factor disability prominently into that picture. You know, when you're talking about 20% of a population, and in this population you find 80% of people are affected by chronic poverty. You understand? And you want to have poverty. It's just logical that you should make them a priority issue. You know, now these are people without access to education. So our education policy, how does it take cognizance of the need of persons with disability? Our health care policy, how does it factor in the needs of persons with disability? Our political structure, you know, how does it factor? Because I mean, we've the disability committee have variously engaged INEC on this. It is not enough that as a person, a blind person, for example, you allow me to take my wife or somebody I feel I trusted to the poll. What if at the end of the day he doesn't,
cast his ballot his choice?
And in civilized countries, these are granted issues. There are ballot papers that are braille enabled. It's my private and personal affair. You know, I don't need to bring it. So these are the issues. So that's why I'm more particular on development. I'm talking about the trust deficit there. For a country, Nigeria, that have refused consistently to sign the disability bill into law, even though, states like Lagos State have been able to do that, and not only sign the bill into law, establish an enabling agency that will see to the, so for a country that consistently refuse to pass this bill into law, so it gives me, cause to worry that, okay, well, this is welcome, no doubt about it. At least we have access to the discussion, but beyond of that, what happens after that?
All right, then thank you very much indeed, Dairo, the Publicity Secretary, Lagos Chapter of the Joint Association of National Association of Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dairo.